Hey, Colin, how are you doing, sir? Good morning.
Good, good. Can you hear me okay? Everything sounds all
Can hear
right?
you
Of
perfectly fine. Yeah, I can see you perfectly as well. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks very much just for taking the time to speak to me. I appreciate it.
course, yeah. Happy to.
So, I mean, first of all, congratulations on the book. I've just finished it now today. Polybius. Well, it's fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Excellent.
I mean, I like the fact. I mean, I wasn't sure how much it was going to kind of really lean into this urban legend. So, I mean, obviously, for people that haven't read it, how much of this? I mean, on the book it says it's based on this urban legend. How much of that did you kind of use to inform the story, and how much kind of did you make up yourself, and how kind of what can people expect about how much of it, if they already know about it, how much can they expect to read about in this book?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely not a history of the legend. It is a fictional construct that sort of imagines the origin of the legend, like where it might have come from. But I was drawing on a lot of kind of the like it. So I guess we should say at the outset, urban legends are fluid, right? They kind of change with the telling. Like there are now, of course, we have this information kind of recorded down in different spaces online or whatever, but I mean, even within that, you'll see variances. So I was kind of drawing on what are consistent tenets about kind of the general area, in which the game turned up, the effect that it had on people, this mysterious, seemingly European company that was involved in its development. And, you know, from kind of just that bare bones, like what I had always wanted to do was kind of tell a coming of age story.
Right.
And so I used those to kind of like lay the groundwork to allow me to to blow it out and to imagine like, okay, like what really was this company? How if this game did exist and affect people, how did it affect people? Those are sorts of things that level of detail just doesn't really exist in what I know to be the canon of the legend. So those were details I was kind of adding in and trying to make some logical sense out of because with like a lot of urban legends, like it's this wonderful sort of like catchy concept. When you start to pull at it, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't, like I'm missing something here that would make this add up and make sense in a broader context. And so those were the ideas I was looking for to try to build on my own around sort of the central tenets of the legend.
Right. So I mean, you said there obviously that you wanted to this kind of coming of age story. So what was kind of what came first, the chicken or the Chucky egg, if you pardon the pun? It was kind of like, was it did you already have kind of you been grappling with an idea of a coming of age story, and then this came
Yeah,
to mind, and you melded them together from two
yeah. So I
different
mean,
stories, if
I
you will.
I have always I'm a very like genre first person. Like I love horror, science fiction, thrillers, suspense. Ever since I was very young, those are the sorts of stories I was drawn to. I like them for a number of reasons, some of which are buried deep inside my psyche that I can't probably extract for you right now.
Sure.
But one of the things I love is how malleable the genre is.
Yes.
It's you see combinations of themes and approaches in horror storytelling that you don't see in like more straightforward dramas or even action films or comedies or whatever. I don't know what it is, but it seems to have an ability to absorb kind of other tropes and produce interesting returns.
Yeah, it's such a
So
metaphorical genre. It's just yeah, it's
it,
great.
it
Yeah.
is, yeah, absolutely it is. And so I mean, it doesn't, you can toss off on, just really quickly. I mean, things like Carrie and Gremlins, and like these are stories that take sort of the changes that younger people are experiencing in life and amplify them in kind of like monstrous ways, right? Like but you still see sort of a piece of yourself within that.
Sure.
So I had wanted to sort of use the coming of age structure in a story, but I hadn't really found the animus for it or whatever until I started thinking more about Polybius. And this I became aware of it back in the late 2000s. Like with first reading about it online. My understanding is it existed in some form online since maybe the late 90s. The legend did. Um, and it had stuck with me. I developed it as a feature film. I was never quite able to get it, I think, to where it would connect with people. And so I lost what looked like it was going to be the job at the outset of COVID, and really didn't know what I was going to do. And we have two children who at the time were much younger, and my wife's job went the opposite way. She got very busy during COVID, and so I was watching the kids all day, and at night, kind of having this long form existential crisis about like what I was going to do. And
Yeah.
I there was something about the idea of this game that kind of gets in your brain and changes you and sort of pass, like, even if you don't play it, you observe me changed by the game, and that might affect you, and this idea of kind of transmission and passage of something within you that spoke to me at that moment in time. So I kind of started to work on it like in my off hours at night, and it was not long before I thought like, oh, this is a kind of the right approach for this coming of age story, but B, I think whatever I was missing in the way that I was trying to adapt the story into a feature, I found here. I think probably because I had just more space to explore who these people were and how they felt and why they felt the way they felt. The economy of screenwriting is really brutal. It's hard to dig in and really examine a character, and that's why when it's done well, like movies are sort of universally well loved in certain films, and it's because like yeah, like they figured it out. So for me, I had a hard time figuring that out for this story in that format, but the when I started to work on the manuscript, it all just sort of made sense.
Yeah, I mean, the book really does read really. I mean, it's a really good read because you can get into the minds of these people, but at the same time, I could really imagine it working on the big screen. Though, it'd make a really great film. I think too. Yeah.
Well, we're working on that. I don't know, so we'll see. Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, obviously because it kind of dives deep into the kind of the psyche of these people and the kind of the reasons for doing these things and all that. Obviously, that's something that's kind of more difficult to portray on the screen
There's
than
a
it is in
lot
the
of
book. Yeah.
internal, yeah, exactly. And I would get a note my manager gave me over and over again was like, can't you see it in their eyes or something? Like,
Yeah.
can't you make it visual? And I was like, you can, but I don't want to. So like, I want this to be about it. It's the beauty of something like John Carpenter's The Thing, right? Where like you and I look at each other and I don't know that there's anything wrong with you, but you could mean to harm me. And I loved the idea that this game gets inside these people. They might act a little bit differently, but to look at them, they're no different. And it becomes impossible to tell who is and isn't affected. And that goes to the point of like the original point of the game as a concept by the people who created it as this tool of disruption, right? Where it's like you want to take this and put it in a place and impact people's minds and change their behavior. But if they're turning into monsters or whatever, it's like that doesn't work. Like it needs to be more insidious than that, I think.
Yeah.
And that was, kind of the mechanism that worked for me. And so that's why so much of it is internal. But I think that was, again, it's like you can chuck that stuff out the window when you're working in this format. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
was a
Yeah.
new experience for me. I had not tried to write a manuscript before. This was the first time I had tried
All
doing
right.
that. And so it was the whole thing was a total learning experience for me, but I really fell in love with the format and the freedoms and opportunities it affords you compared to some other. I mean, there's an economy to it too, but it's just different.
Mhm.
And I found myself feeling really empowered through it.
Yeah, I mean, I love the characters as well. I mean, mention that kind of the format, the dialogue between the characters, not just between them, but also the kind of the internal dialogue works really well. And I
Thank
love it specifically the kind of this bizarre. It's not really a love triangle, but there's this bizarre triangle going on with between the three main protagonists. No,
you.
um, where did that kind of idea come about to have those three as kind of the central characters, where you've got like, without giving too much away, there's an ex-girlfriend, and then there's this possible the other two that are there, there's a girl and a boy who kind of maybe are into each other. And the most, and kind of like those two are very antisocial, whereas the ex-girlfriend is kind of the
Yeah.
more forward of the three. Where did that idea come from, and how did you think that would work best with this particular story?
I mean, I think so. The characters Andy, Ro, and Laurel. Andy and Ro are sort of the central protagonists, and Laurel is Ro's former girlfriend who's become a friend. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't necessarily. Again, like you can poke around in here and probably figure it out. I'm somebody who has had a lot of very close female friends in life. I work very closely with a lot of women, like on projects I've done over the years in the industry. And I think I wanted really just to portray like I like the idea of showing that type of friendship is possible in younger people. That's not predicated on anything other than a sense of kind of understanding and kinship. And I thought it was kind of an interesting, like I think Laurel is, initially I tried to present her as sort of very self-possessed and with it, so that when she sort of starts to go crazy, I was hoping that it might cut a little bit deeper. But as someone who can recognize, like, you and I are not right for each other, but we're important to each other. I thought was an interesting trait to give a younger person. Whether or not it reads as believable, I don't know. But that
I think it
was
does. I mean, she really genuinely does feel like she wants to help him out as much as she can, even though the two of them are separated.
yeah. And then I mean, as far as Andy and Roe go, I with Andy, there's a lot of me in Andy, to be honest with you. I was somebody who was ready to go. Like I grew up in a really small town, which looking, I've had the opportunity now in getting ready to do some press for the book, like speaking with you today. I'm speaking with somebody later this afternoon, my hometown newspaper. I'm doing an interview with them and things like that. And it's really, whether you wanted to or not, it puts you in a reflective mood. And there are aspects to my youth that are right there on the page, that I would not have said, like, oh, I'm going to get anything out of like my experience growing up. I absolutely did. And so, but Andy is a lot like me and kind of that, like, you think and you think, like what's best for yourself at an age where to an extent you might, and to an extent you might not. She's like a prototypal maker, she likes to do things by hand. I thought that was kind of an interesting trait to give a young woman, especially at that point in time. And when the story is told in the early 1980s, to have her feel like a bit of an outsider. I had friends and probably by all accounts a pretty normal childhood, but I was somebody who maybe never really felt, quite at home with myself or where I was. So I think that's there in her, and I think you see that grab a hold of Roe more explicitly than it does her. This sense that I don't know who I am or what I want, and it's kind of horrifying. And again, it's that, there's sort of opposite sides of a coin, right? Again, if you're talking about it in terms of a coming of age structure, I wanted to portray different points of view that I felt like I could, because I felt like I could speak to them, but that also have a universal quality to them. And I think believing you know what's best for you and getting ready to get the hell out of Dodge and being horrified at the concept of, like, who am I? What am I? Where am I going? What is this all about? Like, those are feelings that young people uh, find themselves having at the point in time we are, meeting these characters and spending time with them.
Mhm. And can you give a little bit away? I don't want to give too much of the story away, obviously, but can you give a little bit away about Ro and I'm not forgetting the names now. There's so many. With Ro and Andy's parents, because they both of them have suffered kind of a loss in certain ways. Um, how did how did that come about in the story? Why was that crucial for you to bring those specific losses to those two characters to the story?
Sure. I think, David is Rose's father, the town sheriff, and Rachel is Andy's mother, and she's kind of the town doctor. And this is a small little town in Northern California where you would have a town doctor. It would not be, a place where you'd have a lot of options, but for them to kind of have that life experience, I felt like it was just important to sort of position them relative to, like, their points of view as, like, action was going to unfold in the story, right? I think for David to have lost his wife and to have spent all his time caring about his son in this town, like that's all he's done, for the last 10 years or so. So I think when that starts to be threatened, you see him be a little bit more open-minded about, like, what could be doing this, and he's a little bit more willing to, like, chase the rabbit or whatever, the way the kids are, versus Rachel, who's a more sort of like empirical person who, raising her daughter by herself has been a struggle, because it isn't just she's on her own. There's this negative influence of her ex in her life, so she's sort of having to deal with that, while at the same time, she has a job that is stressful and is deeply meaningful to her in the same way David's job is. And so I liked, kind of having those parallels between the two of them because I felt like it positioned them in an interesting space relative to what was going to happen and the fact that it's their kids that are, that are in jeopardy because of all of this. They've already lost a lot. What will it mean if they lose something more, and what are they willing to do to try and stop that from happening?
Mhm. And then obviously Polybius is kind of like the antagonist in the story, if you will. But at the same time, there's a character that I imagine you kind of brought in there, Mal. I imagine you kind of brought him there to kind of bring kind of a human antagonist into the story as well, no?
Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to try to find, again, it's, if you think about the Polybius legend is the kind of the animus for this coming of age story. Mal is sort of the animus for Polybius, right? Like he
Yep.
takes on a lot of the qualities and sort of steps to the center. When I figured out kind of who he was and that he's this wannabe gangster in this little like seaside town, I was like, this character's kind of funny, but like he's funny because there's sort of a pathetic quality to it, but he's also, I think, because he so desperately wants to be what he, kind of sees himself being, he's dangerous. He will do things, even before the game. Like he's someone who I think is willing to do things that are going to put other people in danger, sort of, so that he can fulfill this
Yeah, for his
prophecy
own.
or whatever he
Yeah.
sees about himself. And so, once the game, kind of levers him up or whatever, I mean, I thought that to show him reaching his potential almost of being like the worst possible person through this game was sort of interesting. Like I liked to have a villain with an arc, I guess. And I felt like you saw him have an arc where he becomes empowered by this, where everyone else is just kind of losing their shit and everything is falling apart. For Mal, it's like, I'm going to seize this moment, and I thought that was something that felt unique and strange and, would add something to the proceedings.
Mhm. I mean, you mentioned there that obviously he works in this small town called Tasker Bay, no? Um, I think Tasker Bay, if it had been set in another place, it had been set in a big city or something like it, the whole effect and the whole story would have been completely different. Was it always in your mind that you wanted to set it in a small seaside coastal
Yes,
port
and that
beforehand?
goes back to some of the tenets of the legend. You hear about the game having turned up in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know that area as well. I know California better, so I was like, I'm going to choose an area that I feel like I can write to a little bit more. I'm also a big film nerd, and like I love The Birds, and I love John Carpenter's The Fog, and those
Yeah, I
were
was going to
shot
say
in.
it reminded me a little bit of kind of the mist. Gave me a lot of kind of the mist vibe, that kind of thing. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Exactly. And so those were real touchstones for me. And I felt like I could kind of create like both through my own experience and then kind of through like a facsimile of, like blending these areas together. I could capture that vibe. But also too, I mean, it does speak to my experience growing up in a small town where you knew a lot of people. There weren't a lot of people you didn't know. If there was someone you did know, or if someone seemed to be acting a little odd or whatever, it was like it wasn't hard to pick up on or maybe be affected by it. And so I felt like that was important to see this game roll out. If it gets into a city, it just felt like it was going to be sort of too anonymous, I guess.
Yeah.
Like too hard to connect to connect the dots and to feel that chaos growing the way it does there.
Uh-huh. And also, obviously, because it is set in this small village, like you said there, you wanted to keep to make sure that it wasn't as anonymous as it could have been like in a large city. Was it complicated for you to decide how much we saw of the rest of the kind of the city, the town before everything
Yes.
kind of hits the fan?
And that was like a kind of a constant negotiation between, what I was writing and the notes I would get from my manager on the piece and me trying to figure out like, yeah, like how much further do I go? There was a fourth friend, a close friend of Rose who sort of stuck with him even after he had kind of abandoned his old life. But I realized, he was very similar to Laurel. I didn't think we needed him. There was a reporter who was sort of chasing the story and who had a great death sequence. I was really sad to lose it, but ultimately I was like, the fact that I can go through the book and like slice and take this guy out is a sign that he doesn't
There's a
need to be
lot,
there.
yeah.
It was very compartmentalized. I like reporters. I like stories about reporters, and I like reporters and stories about fantastic things because I think you can show people taking really logical, grounded steps to try and unravel something that are either met by these impossible roadblocks and you have to accept the fantastic, or they can lead you in a direction where it's like someone dipped a toe in the fantastic and it got into the real world and got into them, and I can
Yeah.
put those pieces together because I have this reporter brain
Yeah,
power or whatever.
I'm
Like
exactly
I
the
like
same.
those
I
characters.
don't particularly like supernatural stories per se, but when there's like
Hmm.
this kind of investigative touch, like in The Ring or these kind of things, where someone
Yeah.
is kind of in the real world investigating what went down, was I really kind of that does hit me hard. But if it's just like a supernatural story, I really it takes me. It's quite difficult to kind of to really buy everything that I'm seeing on the screen, you know?
I think it works. It works really well for me when it is more kind of dreamlike or surreal. So just to bring up the fog again, I think that's a great example of a story where the logic just sort of washes over you. It's not real strong. Like there's a it's a very basic ghost story, like pirates come back to claim their gold. That's it. But the way that it unfolds and the way that it manifests in strange little things. I mean, in like the movie that's been on my mind recently is The Beyond, Fulci's The Beyond. Like that's
Right.
another example of a movie that just operates all like on dream logic, especially toward the end. Like Mandy, great example of that. I again like I've written a book before this, so I talk a lot in terms of film, although I do love to read.
It's
And
inevitable
certainly
though. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, like the stories of I every couple of years I'll reread. I have two collections of short stories by an author named M.R. James. Wrote a lot of
Right.
classic ghost stories, and those have a similar kind of. They'll be, like just the basic, like a warning to the curious. It's like these three crowns were buried along the coast and protected us. This town from invaders. Two of them have been dug up. One of them is still there. Somebody goes to get it. It's like, well, does it really have power? Like, what does it mean that they took it? Like there's they don't care so much, it seems, about like the real granular specifics as if they do a vibe, for lack of a better way of saying it, right? Like that's a kind of a cliche way of referring to things nowadays. But like when it comes to supernatural stuff, I like a vibe. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily like, uh, too much logic because I think there really can't be. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be understandable.
Yeah,
It
you
should
need
be
you need to
beyond
leave
our
the audience to kind of
comprehension.
put a few pieces in the puzzle themselves, no? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it just, yeah, I think some things should be beyond comprehension, and that's scarier. But like
yeah,
with Polybius, the opposite is true. Like this is it could have been like in the legend, you had people playing the game, and they would maybe have a seizure or a reaction to it or whatever, and then a few days later, you'd see like Men in Black come into the arcade and plug some box into the cabinet, and who knows what they're doing. So there was always this kind of grounded element to it. I never felt like it had been, it was the last starfighter and a spaceship had dropped it, or it was, like there was a ghost inside it or whatever. That in this, this telling of it, like that's kind of what I wanted to portray. Certainly, you could say they captured some sort of spirit and coded it into the game or whatever you want, but like that wasn't the approach that I wanted to take here. I also didn't want to give the characters too much insight. I still wanted it to be mysterious. I wanted it to be just clear enough that they understand it's dangerous without, without giving too many specifics, because then I think it starts to feel like something you can surmount, right?
yeah.
Like I want it to feel insurmountable to them. I want it to be, even though it's grounded in like a loose kind of science, it's like it's still they aren't going to be able to figure it out. They just have to try and kind of outrun it by the end.
Mhm. I mean, a lot of the books and films that you've mentioned are very kind of like going back to the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
I imagine because I mean, obviously, this urban legend, this machine dates back to kind of the old arcade times. But I imagine at the same time, because there is some kind of technology involved there. Was that something you were kind of wanted to kind of keep clear of and not go deep dive, not dive too deep into that kind of stuff? And was that why you
Yeah,
specifically set it back then as well in that kind of era?
Exactly. I mean, we all, if you're a genre fan, and if you have ever worked in the medium at all, like, the frustration of cell phones and like instant
Sure.
communication. Like, it just
Yeah.
ruins a lot of suspense. Like, there are clever ways of working around it, but, it just makes things so much harder. But even then, again, like, kind of settling on, like, I love the idea. I'm a gamer. I love technology. I love, when it kind of you can get it to do things that maybe it shouldn't or that you
Right.
didn't expect it to. Like I think that that's kind of interesting. And I always knew that I wanted to use this as the basis for a story. But again, it was like finding that right, like when do you come into the story? So the idea of like the origin of the legend, like this is why what the book pretends to lay out is the reason why you only know the little bit about Polybius that you do because it had this cataclysmic appearance and like the what happened after resulted in kind of just these grains of sand kind of in the Sahara that explain to you what it might have been. Um, so it was, once I had made that decision, there was really no other time to do it except the early 80s.
Yeah.
It was that moment in time was sort of before me, but certainly at the, kind of in the 90s, when it was on its decline, I spent a lot of time in arcades.
Right.
My mom would go get her haircut and I would go next door and play games or whatever like that. So it was a space that I love and I miss and I think was cool. And, like again, there's a vibe to it that I think is kind of interesting to try to capture and to portray. So it was mostly predicated on where I wanted to start the story of Polybius and deciding that it was, there. But once I decided that, it opened up all these fun opportunities, to add in details from that period that, I think
Yeah. No, I mean, I used
just
to hang
help.
around. I didn't have arcades near my house, but whenever we used to go to the seaside in the UK, there was lots of arcades, and I used to love it. But that's very much a bygone era now. So at the same
Yeah.
time, obviously, you
Yeah.
didn't want to get into tech, but at the same time, you're going to have a lot of readers that you could get reading this book that have no idea of any of this kind of arcade stuff. So how did you approach that to make sure that they wouldn't kind of be ignorant to what's going on in the book?
Sure, sure. I mean, and that's an interesting question because again, like these were dialogues I was kind of having throughout writing it with friends and like with my managers I was working on, I would share pages with him. It's just we tried to work in like small details, to try to like kind of make like a concept of a video store. Just I mean, it comes down to like what is in it, right? Like it is
Yeah.
full of movies where you come in, you take it off the shelf, there's a tag. It's like, yeah, you say it more artfully than that, but like you just use those little beats to kind of like establish what it is. Because yeah, absolutely, there is a lot of stuff in there that is like a couple eras out of date now. But I think, like I think there's an appetite and an interest for that. Like, I mean, kids are into cassettes again and people are hoarding, VHS copies of movies and things. It's like I
Sure,
think,
and the
there
books even
it's
compared to Stranger Things and things like that, where the kids have all seen Stranger Things, so they've seen the kind of
that
things that you
helps. And
spoke about
that's
in the book. Yeah,
those are the swell marketing folks at Gallery coming up with that stuff. So thank goodness for them. Um, I would probably have come up with something terrible like, did you ever see Lamora and Messiah of Evil? It's kind of like that. There's a
yeah.
game. Okay, no, shut up, man. Let's do our job. That's it's a lot of
No, that
conversations.
was it was Stranger Things and The Walking Dead. I think they came up with. Yeah, that was it. Was it? Yeah.
And so the Walking Dead thing, I have always kind of said like there is a zombie element to this story where you
Yeah,
have
there
a
is. Yeah.
group of survivors that are kind of holed up against like a brain dead mass that's converging on them and like but and obviously they move in more random patterns than zombies do, where zombies are typically looking to feed. These people are just looking to sort of like unleash their id, so to speak. And that doesn't draw them to you, but if you get in their way, it might be bad for you. So
Yeah.
there was a yeah, definitely like a zombie vibe to the whole enterprise, especially toward the end where things are really kind of falling apart and you see them those desperate planning moments like it's the end of Dawn of the Dead or whatever, where it's like, can we get out of here, like what's going to happen with the baby? It's like it's just getting closing in on you and making you deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there also that you're an avid gamer, and that you like to kind of make things do things that they're probably not supposed to do. Is there anything that actually did happen to you that kind of sparked this story, kind of things that you like to do? Because it sounds like you do a few things that the protagonist does in the book. You kind
Yeah,
of fiddle
yeah,
around
yeah,
with
yeah.
things,
Andy and
take things
I,
apart, put them back together, and see what you can do with them. No?
yeah, I have always, I have no formal training in it whatsoever, but I have always enjoyed figuring out how things work, and trying to fix things. And I enjoy woodworking, and I enjoy like hobby electronics and stuff like that. So like that is, I don't know, I could tell like my grandfather was a woodworker, but I didn't really spend much time in his wood shop. Like my brother was super into electronics, but that wasn't something that like he and I shared, at the time. I don't know. I don't know. As far as gaming goes though, like, yeah, I mean, we went from Atari to Nintendo to Sega to TurboGrafx to Sony. I mean, it's always been a space that I've
Yeah,
enjoyed, and there's so much good genre storytelling in games right now and people doing such
so good.
interesting things
Yeah.
with the form. It's such a cool time. And I have kids now, so I spend a fair amount of time doing things with them, and there's certain things
If you've
I'm
not
a
got
pretty
split fiction,
liberal
I'm
person when
completely
it.
hooked. Have you got split fiction? I'm hooked on split fiction with the kids right now, and it's a fantastic game.
No, okay,
It's a
I'll check
co-op. It's a
it
co-op
out.
game, so you got to play two at the same time, so that stops them
Yeah,
arguing. But it's a fantastic game. And they've
all
already
right,
picked up the rights to make a film out of it and everything. It's fantastic. It only came out a couple of
really
weeks ago. Yeah,
fascinating. I'll check it out.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still like, what am I right now? I'm still playing through the remastered version of the thing, and
Right. Oh
I'm
yeah,
still
right. That's just yeah. I'm on Alan
Yeah, I'm
Wake
still
2 at
kind
the
of
moment.
into
Yeah.
Alien Dark Incursion has been fun. And then I'm just trying to think like what else that's been good lately. Like Withering Rooms, Mouthwashing were both really good. I don't know if you played either of those.
I haven't played those ones. No, no.
That Mouthwashing is great. It is it's one of those things where it's like, who said it was okay to name your game that? Like I pitch titles like that all the time. They're like, man, what the hell are you talking about? Like a survival game set on a spaceship. It's just fantastic.
All right.
And with or sorry, I'm still wakes the deep. Withering Rooms is separate from both, but still wakes the deep is another great game I've been playing lately, where it's set on an oil rig, and again, like kind of survival, stealth, that type of a thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man, I dig that stuff a lot. But
Yeah. No, but yeah, there's some
it
amazing. It's like you said, there's some amazing genre stuff. I mean, Alan Wake 2. I'm sure you've played Alan Wake 2 as well.
yeah,
It's fantastic.
great game. They keep finding ways to reinvent Resident Evil and do interesting things with it.
Well, Resident Evil
So
4 as well. The remaster was fantastic as well. Yeah, fantastic.
yeah, yeah. Talking about vibe, like those games. That's one thing those games do, I think, really well is kind of put you in an environment and make you feel. And like that's, I think it's why games are special, and I think it's why adaptations of games a lot of times struggle because you have a subjective experience that is
Yeah,
being made object, right? Like
yeah. Like
for
you're
me,
watching
like
someone else play a game. I've never been a fan of watching someone else play. Like all these
I
streamers, I
can't do
can't
it
watch
either. I
some of these
know
guys streaming. But my son is. He
millions
can
of
watch hours and
billions
hours and
of
hours on
dollars,
YouTube of
you know.
these people streaming
Yeah.
it. But for me, that's just like watching someone play. And it's like when the Atari and all those things came out, I was like, no, I need my hands on the handset.
And
Yeah,
you're
but
not even in a room with your buddies when
yeah,
it's
exactly.
happening,
Yeah.
right? Like you're just sitting like
And they're
watching a
not even your
stream.
buddies. Most of them are just people that you're watching streaming on Twitch or
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
no, I mean it's one thing if we're all hanging out and somebody's playing whatever single play, like Dead Space. Like when Dead Space came out, I remember us sitting around and just like watching somebody like pick up bodies and fire them with the gravity gun over and over again. And like this is the best thing ever. But yeah, it's like to watch someone else do that or to see somebody take those elements and then kind of interpret them into a story. It's like I'm not saying it can't work because there have been video game adaptations that I've really liked.
Hmm.
Um, it just is not the same
Yeah.
because and especially now with like, I don't know if you play VR, like if you played Resident Evil
Yeah,
7
but
in
I played
VR,
the
like
last one. I've not got the new one, but yeah, I did play on the VR
it's
one.
dynamite. Like, and it's hard to imagine replicating that experience. And same thing with Dark Incursion. It's like, man, yeah, what a great game that is to like finally get an Alien movie after all these years.
I'm very
It's
curious to see actually. There's the new remake, the film that's coming out soon, Until Dawn. I'm curious to see
yes,
how that's
yeah.
going to play out because I think they've completely rehashed the story and it's kind of goes kind of back in time or something. I don't know if based on the trailer, it's a kind of a strange
I
concept. Yeah.
haven't looked to see yet either who wrote it. I don't know if you're familiar with him. The original game was co-written by a filmmaker named Larry Fessenden.
Yeah, like
And
fascinating.
Larry
Yeah, I've interviewed him a
Fessenden,
couple of times. Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
yeah, like I have been fascinated by him since I think Wendigo, which would have been his third film, but then I subsequently went
Yeah.
back and like became obsessed with Having No Time. Just like it was just such a moment, like this, you know, kind of hipster guy in New York making these like low budget horror movies that had, you know, really cool takes on classic structures. It's a Frankenstein story. You know, it's a story of Frankenstein's monster. It's a vampire story. It's
Yeah.
a,
A
you know,
werewolf
kind of
story and
this
all these different things. Yeah.
legendary creature. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, like I know that he wrote or co-wrote the game.
That's
I
right. Yeah.
don't know if he was involved in the adaptation or not, which would probably impact my faith in
I
its
don't think
ability to
he is actually. I'm
execute.
not sure. Yeah. Because I think they wrote it was like a I think he wrote a game on wheels that he was actually in the game. It was for
Hmm.
VR as well. I think you remember it. I can't remember what it was called that one. And then they made
Oh, yes, yeah, you're just on a roller coaster,
just on rails and
right?
you have to shoot. But he popped up at the bottom
Yeah.
like it was like the circus ringmaster or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was fun. I cannot remember what that was called, but
can't
yeah, I
remember,
enjoyed
but
that.
it was from the same world as Until Dawn. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
again, you know, I think that just again it shows you like, you know, here's a guy who has you know, made films, produced films, made games. It's just like horror. There's so many opportunities to tell interesting stories in it across so many mediums, and they all can deliver something different. You know, like film can give you that real visceral scare or feeling of tension. Gaming gives you this immersive experience, and to pick up a book and read. Like I am finishing Memorials by Richard Chisholm right now, and like it has just sucked me in, you know, so much to like the era and the lives of these characters. Like it I don't know. I think, you know, horror has like tiptoed kind of out of the trash can or whatever that most people kept it in for a really long time. When you see something like The Substance getting nominated for Oscars, like
Yeah.
it's really, really. But you know, I think it's still mostly like people just don't think much of the genre, and it's like it's a shame because there's so much opportunity. But who knows? Maybe that's what allows it to be its weird self. You know, that there's not as many like kind of hypercritical eyes on it, figuring out how
Yeah,
to
it's a shame. I
turn it.
mean, it's like A24, for example, is a really great production company for horror, but they're really kind of branching out, and they still do the odd horror movie, but they're really branching out because there's not such a great, huge audience for
Yeah,
horror, unfortunately. Yeah,
yeah. Um,
yeah. But yeah, so yeah, I don't want to keep you. So yeah, obviously this you're promoting this book right now. But I imagine you've got something else or a few things on the go at the same time. Is there anything that you can tell us about that you hope to get finished off
nothing,
sometime soon?
nothing real specific. I have two
No.
book proposals that are out right now to try and, you know, get something else going. One is a contemporary story, one is period set. Both deal with one deals with kind of an urban legend, and one deals with sort of an unsolved crime that has an interesting sort of quality to it that I think it connects with kind of a very modern anxiety a lot of us experience. So I'm hopeful on the two of those. I have concepts to do two additional books that would sort of expand the story of Polybius. One
All
that
right.
moves the story into the 90s, kind of at the birth of the fun internet, and you know the effect that that has on the existence of something that is a file, and then one that would take place sort of in the present, where we're following, you know, a character through kind of this experience. So, but that all depends on how the book does. So we'll see. And then I've got uh, kind of a suspense thriller, like a contained film script that has a producer and director attached, and I am
Okay.
needing to do rewrites on and have not had time to do yet, so I got to do that soon. And that's you know, it's a super weird time in the movie industry right now.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand why things are getting made or not getting made, why some people are working and why others aren't. You know, it's I've seen an exodus of people I care about and have worked with from the industry over the last couple of years. I just, you know, it's no one really quite knows what's going to happen. And there was never an A to B to C way of getting things made.
Sure.
But the loose structures that had been in place are starting to fall away too. So it's an
All
interesting
right.
time.
Yes. Slowly, the kind of the things that deserve recognition, are getting recognized. I mean, oh, you just today, this morning, there was an article about there's a huge Millie Bobby Brown film on Netflix at the moment, but what everyone's talking about is this indie miniseries Adolescence that everyone's talking about
Yeah,
now. That's
yeah.
just great news to see things like that happening now. Yeah.
And there's great stuff that's being made. I have been watching. I don't know if you were Scavenger's Brain fan, but some of that creative team is working on a show now called Common Side Effects on. Yeah, I've been watching it on Max, but it's an animated show that sort of it involves a conspiracy in the pharmaceutical industry.
All right.
I highly recommend Scavenger's Brain. It
Okay.
is like this real like kind of contemplative sci-fi story about a ship that crash lands on an alien planet where a lot of the life, like the alien life, the way that it's depicted, I've never seen anything that has felt like true, not never, but seldom do you see something that feels truly alien. This show kind of feels like these people have been to another planet. Like this is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And it has this, like this very deliberate pace, great characterization, beautiful score, beautiful animation. Yeah, highly, highly recommend. Very,
Oh
very
no, I'll
good
check
show.
that out. Yeah, it sounds
And
really
and
right up my street.
deeply
Yeah.
unsettling at times.
Uh-huh. No, I'm going to check that out. It sounds right up my street. That. Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
great show.
Uh-huh.
Great.
Well, brilliant. Listen, thank you so much for your time, Colin. I'll let you go. Wish you the best of luck with the book which comes out next month, and fingers
Yeah.
crossed we get to read some more in the '90s and the present day about that. And I wish you the best luck with all of the other projects you've got going on soon, and hope to speak to you again sometime soon about one of those. All right.
Thank you
Thanks very
very
much for your
much.
time. Nice to meet you. Take care of yourself.
All right.
All right. Have a
Take
good
care.
day. Cheers now. Bye.